Chosen one, pause for a moment. What I am about to share is not casual, and it is not for everyone. This message is urgent, and it carries weight. If you are not walking the divine path, if you are not truly seeking God with a sincere heart, you should not be watching this. This is only for those who have been set apart, those who have felt the quiet pull of God even when they tried to ignore it. If you are still here, it is because you were meant to be. I want you to understand this clearly. This message reached you at the exact right time, not a second too early, not a moment too late. God does not miss timing, and He does not waste words. This video was meant for only one person, and right now, that person is you. Soon, this message will not remain public because not everyone is meant to hear what you are about to receive. There is a reason you clicked. There is a reason something inside you told you to stay. By the end of this video, you will understand why certain things in your life have felt heavy, quiet, and strangely significant all at once. Before we continue, chosen ones, give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon, share this message with other chosen ones, and comment 777 to declare that you are aligned with the divine timing God has placed on your life. Section 2. Why you were drawn here without trying. Chosen one, I want you to listen slowly now. Not with your ears alone, but with that quiet place inside you that has been awake for a long time. You did not arrive here by effort. You were not hunting for answers. You were not chasing signs. You were drawn. And there is a difference. People who are not chosen search endlessly. They scroll, they compare, they consume noise. They are always looking outside themselves, hoping something will finally make them feel whole. But you are different. You may scroll like everyone else, but when something meant for you appears, your spirit recognizes it before your mind does. Something in you pauses. Something says, stay. Something says, this is familiar. That is not curiosity. That is recognition. You did not come here because the title sounded dramatic. You came because it felt personal. It felt like someone was speaking directly to you even before a single word was spoken. That is how divine alignment works. God does not shout at His chosen ones. He nudges them. He pulls gently. He whispers just loud enough for the right heart to hear. Let me tell you something important. True calling never feels loud in the beginning. It feels quiet, heavy, and strangely intimate. It feels like something pressing on your chest without words. It feels like a thought you cannot shake, even when you try to distract yourself. That is what you felt when you found this message. And that feeling did not come from emotion, it came from awareness. You have always had this. Even as a child, there were moments you could not explain. Times when you felt older than your age. Times when you sensed things before they happened. Times when you felt deeply, even when others seemed unaffected. You noticed pain others ignored. You questioned things others accepted. You carried thoughts that felt too big for your surroundings. That was not imagination. That was early sensitivity. Sensitivity is often misunderstood. The world calls it weakness. God calls it access. Chosen ones are not hardened early. They are softened early, so they can perceive what others miss. That is why life felt intense for you from the beginning. That is why you struggled to fit into shallow spaces. That is why small talk drained you. Your spirit has always been tuned differently. Now listen carefully. Being drawn does not mean life became easy. In fact, it often became harder. Because when God marks someone early, He also begins separating them early. You may have felt out of place in rooms where you should have belonged. You may have felt unseen by people who claimed to love you. You may have felt misunderstood even when you spoke clearly. That was not rejection. That was filtration. God filters before He builds. Many people saw this video. Few felt compelled to stay. Many clicked and left. Some felt uncomfortable and moved on. But you stayed. Not because you understood everything, but because something inside you felt steady here. That steadiness is a sign of alignment. When truth meets readiness, the soul does not panic. It settles. I want you to understand this part deeply because it will heal something in you. You were not overlooked in life. You were preserved. There is a difference. Overlooked people grow bitter. Preserved people grow deep. And you have depth. Even when you did not want it, even when it felt heavy, even when it isolated you. You have always known there was more. More than routine, more than survival, more than just getting by. You may not have had words for it, but you felt it. A sense that your life was not meant to be ordinary in the shallow sense, not louder, not famous, but meaningful, weight-bearing, purposeful in a way that affects others quietly. That is why you are here now. God does not randomly pull people into moments like this. He pulls them when they are finally ready to hear without resisting. You are not here because you are perfect. You are here because you are open. You have been broken enough to listen, tired enough to reflect, mature enough to receive without ego. And I want to say this clearly, without hesitation. Being chosen does not mean being better than others. It means being responsible for more awareness, more restraint, more patience, more self-examination. Chosen ones are not crowned first, they are refined first. They are not elevated quickly, they are deepened slowly. That is why your journey has felt longer than others. That is why shortcuts never worked for you. That is why when you tried to force things, they fell apart. God was not blocking you. He was protecting the weight you will one day carry. You cannot place heavy purpose on a shallow foundation. Think back for a moment. How many times did things almost work, but not fully? How many times did doors open slightly, then close? How many times did you feel close to breakthrough, only to be pulled back into silence? That was not failure. That was calibration. You are being calibrated right now. This moment, this message is not about excitement. It is about clarity. God is aligning your inner world before He allows your outer world to shift. Because if the outside changes before the inside is ready, it will crush you. And God does not crush His chosen. He prepares them. You were drawn here because your spirit is tired of confusion. You are ready for understanding. Not noise, not hype. Understanding. You are ready to stop questioning your sensitivity, your depth, your loneliness, your timing. You are ready to see it as design, not defect. And here is something many will never hear, but you need to. The chosen ones are often the last to recognize themselves, because humility is built into their process. You may have doubted yourself, you may have minimized your calling, you may have tried to blend in. That was not denial, that was safety. But now, the season is shifting. You are being drawn because something in you is ready to step out of survival mode and into alignment. Not rushing, not forcing, just aligning. This message found you because your spirit is finally quiet enough to receive what has always been there. Stay with me. What comes next will explain the weight you have been carrying, and it will bring relief to a part of you that has been holding its breath for a long time. Section 3. The silent weight you've been carrying. Chosen one, I want you to exhale right now, slowly. Not because you are weak, but because you have been strong for far too long without rest. There is a weight you have been carrying quietly, and most people around you have no idea how heavy it has been. You smile, you function, you show up, but inside there has been a constant pressure that never fully leaves. This is not ordinary tiredness, it is not laziness, it is not a lack of gratitude, it is spiritual and emotional fatigue, the kind that comes from holding things that were never meant to be shared with everyone, the kind that comes from understanding too much while saying too little, the kind that comes from being the stable one while quietly unraveling inside. You have been the listener more than the speaker, the supporter more than the supported, the one others lean on, even when you feel like you are barely standing yourself. And you did it without announcing it, without demanding recognition, without keeping score. That is why it became heavy. Chosen ones often carry weight in silence because their strength is assumed. People look at you and think you are fine. You look calm. You look composed. You look like someone who can handle things. So life keeps handing you more responsibility, more expectation, more emotional labor. And because you are capable, you accept it, until one day you realize you have been breathing shallow for years. Let me say something that may bring relief. God sees the weight you never spoke about. He sees the nights you went quiet instead of reacting. He sees the moments you swallowed words to keep peace. He sees the prayers you could not even form properly because you were too tired to explain yourself again. Silence has not hidden you from Him. It has revealed you to Him. You have felt lonely even in familiar places, not because people are absent, but because connection has been shallow. You crave depth, truth, presence. And when conversations stay on the surface, your soul feels starved. That is not arrogance. That is hunger for alignment. You are not meant to bond over distraction. You are meant to bond over meaning. This is why crowds exhaust you. This is why small talk drains you. This is why you sometimes withdraw without explanation. Your nervous system has been protecting you. Your spirit has been conserving energy. You are not avoiding people. You are avoiding unnecessary leakage. There is something else I need to name, because naming it brings healing. You have carried guilt for needing space. You questioned yourself for pulling back. You wondered if something was wrong with you because you could not keep up the same pace as others. But listen carefully. Rest is not rebellion. Withdrawal is not disobedience. Sometimes stepping back is the most faithful thing you can do. You have been processing things internally that others process externally. While others vent, you reflect. While others release emotion outward, you absorb and analyze. That internal processing takes energy. It takes time. It takes solitude. And when you do not give yourself permission for it, the weight accumulates. You may have noticed moments where your body felt heavy for no clear reason. Moments where motivation dipped even though nothing was technically wrong. Moments where joy felt distant, not absent, just muted. That was not depression in the way people casually label it. That was compression. Too much meaning stored without release. Chosen ones are meaning carriers, and meaning has weight. You were not meant to carry this alone forever. But there was a season where you had to. Not because God enjoys testing you, but because certain depths cannot be taught. They must be lived. You were learning discernment. You were learning restraint. You were learning how to stay grounded when misunderstood. These lessons are not loud. They are learned in quiet endurance. I want you to hear this clearly. You were never abandoned in your silence. God was closest to you there. When your life slowed, when people misunderstood, when progress felt delayed, God was stabilizing your inner world. He was strengthening the foundation while everything else seemed still. That is why you survived moments that should have broken you. Think back to times you felt like you were holding everything together by faith alone. Times when logic failed you. Times when reassurance did not come. Times when all you had was an inner knowing that told you to keep going, even without explanation. That knowing did not come from you. It came from God. You may have blamed yourself for feeling heavy. You may have thought you were ungrateful or spiritually weak. That is not true. What you felt was the strain of growth. Muscles ache when they strengthen. Souls ache when they expand. Here is where healing begins. You do not have to justify your tiredness anymore. You do not have to explain why you need space. You do not have to apologize for being selective with your energy. The season of silent endurance is easing, not ending suddenly, but easing. You are being allowed to set things down slowly. This message itself is part of that release. As you listen, your nervous system is recognizing safety. Your spirit is recognizing truth. That is why you feel calmer than expected. That is why the weight feels named, not judged. You are not being pushed. You are being understood. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling deeply. There is nothing broken about your sensitivity. It is not something to fix. It is something to steward. And stewardship requires rest, not constant output. God is not asking you to carry more right now. He is asking you to breathe, to acknowledge the weight, to stop pretending it was light. When you stop minimizing your load, healing can finally begin. You do not have to collapse to deserve rest. You do not have to reach breaking point to be seen. God intervenes before that. This is intervention. Gentle, precise, timely. Stay with me. In the next part, I will explain why God allowed this weight to be private, and why not everyone was meant to understand what you have been carrying. Section 4. Why God kept this from everyone else. Chosen one, there is something you need to understand now, and I want you to receive it without resistance. Not everything God does in your life is meant to be explained to other people. Some things are hidden on purpose, not because they are wrong, but because they are sacred, and what you have been carrying falls into that category. You may have wondered why certain parts of your journey felt invisible, why the deepest struggles were never truly understood, why even sincere people seemed unable to grasp what you were going through. It can feel isolating when you are doing inner work that no one sees. But that invisibility was not neglect. It was protection. God does not expose what is still forming. There are seasons where God keeps things between you and Him, not because others are evil, but because they are unprepared. Some people can only handle finished testimonies. They cannot handle the process. They cannot sit with uncertainty. They cannot hold weight without trying to reshape it into something more comfortable for themselves. If God had allowed everyone access to your inner world, they would have spoken too soon. They would have judged too quickly. They would have labeled what they did not understand. And premature opinions can interrupt divine work. That is why God often isolates His chosen ones emotionally before He ever uses them publicly. You may have noticed this pattern. When you tried to explain what you were feeling, words failed you. When you tried to open up, the response felt shallow or dismissive. Sometimes people meant well, but their advice felt off. Other times, silence felt safer than misunderstanding. That was not you shutting down. That was wisdom forming. Not everyone deserves access to unfinished truth. You see, when something is still being shaped, it is vulnerable. And God is fiercely protective over what He is shaping in you. He knows the pressure it will carry one day. He knows the responsibility attached to your calling, and He knows that careless hands can damage what is delicate in its early stages. That is why your process has been quiet. You were not meant to explain yourself to people who only understand outcomes. You were not meant to defend your pace to those who rush. You were not meant to prove your faith to those who live on the surface of belief. God kept your inner work private because it required silence to mature. There is another truth here, and it may sting a little before it heals. Some people would have tried to benefit from you before you were ready. They would have leaned on you, pulled from you, drained you, without understanding the cost. God saw that, and He stepped in. Distance is sometimes divine mercy. You may have lost closeness with people you once trusted. You may have felt a slow drift rather than a dramatic separation. Conversations changed, energy shifted. Things no longer felt safe in the same way. That was not random. God was reducing access. Chosen ones are not meant to be available to everyone. That can feel lonely, especially if you value connection. But limited access does not mean limited love. It means intentional boundaries. God teaches His chosen ones discernment through experience, not instruction. You learn who can hold you by seeing who stays present without needing to control you. Think back. How many times did you share something personal only to feel misunderstood or exposed afterward? How many times did vulnerability leave you feeling weaker instead of supported? Those moments taught you something. They taught you when to speak and when to stay quiet. They taught you the difference between attention and care. God was teaching you discernment, and discernment is not suspicion, it is clarity. It is knowing where your spirit feels safe. It is recognizing who listens without rushing to fix. It is noticing who respects your silence instead of demanding explanation. You were not meant to be fully accessible during this season. You were meant to be intact. There is also something powerful happening beneath the surface. When God keeps your process hidden, He strengthens your dependence on Him alone. When there is no audience, no validation, no applause, your faith deepens. You learn to stand without being seen. You learn to trust without external confirmation. That kind of faith is unshakable. Public faith can be influenced. Private faith is anchored. This is why God often builds his strongest servants in obscurity, because when recognition eventually comes, it does not define them. They have already learned who they are in silence. They have already wrestled with doubt, identity, and calling without external reinforcement. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not overlooked. You are in a protected process. Let me say this with authority. If everyone understood you right now, you would not grow. If everyone agreed with you, you would not develop discernment. If everyone supported you immediately, you would never learn to hear God clearly for yourself. The privacy was necessary. God kept this from others because it required maturity to hold. And you are just now stepping into a place where understanding replaces confusion, where peace replaces anxiety, where clarity replaces self-doubt. That does not mean you will remain hidden forever. It means you will be revealed when you are ready, not when others are curious. You do not need to explain your silence. You do not need to justify your boundaries. You do not need to reopen doors God closed gently. Trust the separation. Trust the quiet. Trust the timing. What God is doing in you is too important to rush and too sacred to expose prematurely. Stay with me. In the next part, we will talk about why this season was never about them, and why everything God has been doing has been deeply personal, intentional, and centered on you. Section 5. This was not about them, it was about you, chosen one. I want you to hear this without flinching. What you went through was never about them. Not the rejection, not the misunderstanding, not the lack of recognition. It was never a commentary on your worth. It was a refining of your alignment. For a long time, you measured yourself through response. You checked your value through how others reacted, how they showed up, how they stayed or left. That is human, especially for someone with a deep heart. But God had to gently, and sometimes painfully, detach you from that habit. Because your purpose cannot survive if it depends on approval. You were never meant to be shaped by applause. There were seasons where you gave more than you received. You listened longer than anyone listened to you. You showed patience when others were careless. You stayed understanding when others were dismissive. And somewhere along the way, a quiet question formed inside you. Why does it feel like I am always the one holding space, but rarely the one being held? That question matters. And God heard it. What you were experiencing was not imbalance by accident. It was exposure. God was revealing to you how often you overextended yourself for people who could not reciprocate your depth, not because they were evil, but because they were limited. And limitation is not a sin, but it does require boundaries. You were learning where to stop pouring. This is difficult for chosen ones because your nature is to give. You carry empathy. You see potential. You sense pain beneath behavior. And because of that, you excuse too much. You explain too much. You tolerate too much. God had to let you reach a point where your soul said, something has to change. That moment was not bitterness. It was awakening. You see, if God had corrected this through instruction alone, you might not have listened. But experience teaches in a way words cannot. Feeling drained teaches you the value of discernment. Feeling unseen teaches you to stop seeking identity from others. Feeling taken for granted teaches you self-respect. This was not about them failing you. It was about you learning yourself. There is something powerful that happens when a chosen one stops chasing understanding, when you stop explaining your intentions, when you stop trying to be perceived correctly by everyone, when you stop adjusting your truth to fit someone else's comfort. That is the moment your energy returns to you. You have been slowly reclaiming yourself. At first, it felt uncomfortable. You questioned whether you were becoming distant. You wondered if you were hardening. But what you were actually doing was stabilizing. You were learning that love does not require self-erasure, that kindness does not require overexposure, that service does not require depletion. God was teaching you priority. Here is a truth many struggle to accept. Being chosen does not mean being endlessly available. Jesus himself withdrew. He stepped away from crowds. He rested. He prayed alone. Not because people were unimportant, but because alignment requires solitude. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to say no without explaining your entire inner world. You are allowed to protect your peace without guilt. You are allowed to invest where there is mutual respect. These are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of stewardship. You are learning to steward yourself. There was also something else happening. As long as your attention was scattered, your focus was diluted. As long as you were emotionally tied to how others treated you, your clarity remained unstable. God needed your attention inward, not outward. He needed you grounded, not reactive. That is why certain relationships lost their grip on you. That is why emotional triggers softened. That is why some conversations no longer pulled you in. You were not becoming cold. You were becoming clear. Clarity feels lonely at first because it removes noise, and noise can feel like company when you are used to it. But clarity brings peace. You are now reaching a place where you no longer need constant validation, where you no longer overgive to earn belonging, where you